Explorer boards are a unique feature of EasyMorph Server, providing highly customizable home pages for both technical and non-technical users to monitor, manage, and collaborate on just about any data or business process. Let's take a look at the different capabilities of boards and, most importantly, how you can build them. To be able to create a board in an EasyMorph Server space, you need to have the Explorer feature turned on within the space settings. Note that if you have EasyMorph Server Team or Enterprise editions, then you can enable Explorer, including boards, within a single space only. It's important to know this since permissions in EasyMorph Server are managed at the space level. This means that all users with access to the space will be able to see all boards you create within it. Explorer can be enabled in all spaces by purchasing the EasyMorph Server Explorer add-on. Now Explorer is enabled within our space, let's create a new board. I'll call it Manufacturing Management, and I must also give it a 3-character code. This code must be unique within the space as it forms part of the URL or link for users to navigate directly to the board. We can also add the sections we want our board to have. It isn't important we do this now, as we can add additional sections later. So I'll just add a metrics section to get us started. Now we have our board created, ready for us to begin configuring it. So let's set up our metrics section and add some KPIs to our board. Individual metrics can be added in 2 different ways. Firstly, by adding a metric which has already been created in the catalog. I haven't created them yet, so let's go and do that first. Over in the catalog, I can add a new metric, giving it a name, order queue in this case, and I must select a shared memory key where the actual value of the metric will be stored. We'll come back to shared memory keys in a second. And let's set the initial value for the metric. I'll set it to 0. We'll click on Create Metric to save it, and now we can head back to our board in order to add this metric to our metrics section. I need to click on Edit Board to go back to edit mode. Now I can click on one of the plus boxes where I want to put the metric, and I can add the metric from my catalog onto my board. I like to define the metrics in the catalog first for a few reasons, one of which it makes them reusable, but I can also add metrics directly to the metrics section. Here I'll create a new metric, give it a label, and set the shared memory key where the value will be stored. If it's a memory key that's already created, I can select it from the list. I want to add this sales metric so the manufacturing team can see the orders coming in today and what they're going to need to manufacture tomorrow. There are some additional settings and capabilities of metrics which we can't currently manage within EasyMorph Server, although this functionality is coming in the future. So let's head over to EasyMorph Desktop and we can manage those settings. On the Explorer tab, let's make sure my EasyMorph Desktop is pointed to the correct space. Then I can see all of the catalog items, including the metric that I created. So let's edit this metric and look at some of the settings available to us that aren't possible directly on the server. The first of these additional settings are I can add a prefix or a suffix to the beginning or end of my metric. This can be really useful. For example, if it's a monetary value, I can add a $sign to the beginning or even USD at the end. I can also define a format if I wanted to for that number, but in this case, it's just the numeric, so I'll take out my suffix and prefix, and instead I'll add in some thresholds. Now, thresholds allow me to do conditional formatting so that the value could be displayed, highlighted in red or green to indicate to the user if the value is good or bad, really make it stand out on that dashboard. So let's add those thresholds. Now I can define what I want those thresholds to be, whether they're neutral. I can also set them to be bad, which will make them highlighted in red. There's also the option to make them good also, which will highlight them in green. Doesn't really make sense. My metric is never going to go below 0. So let's edit our thresholds again. Let's say if it's under 1000, then I like it to be good and green. And obviously over 3000, it's red. Set that and we can see that's gone green to indicate that currently it's below 1000 and that therefore is good. We head back over to our board in EasyMorph Server. We can see our metric has also gone green there. So these KPIs update in real time now within EasyMorph Server boards, which is really handy. I can leave the page open and just watch my KPI update. But how does my KPI update anyway? For that, let's head back to EasyMorph Desktop and let's look at the actions available to us in workflows to work with KPIs in our board. Because our metrics are based on shared memory keys, the first action available to us is the shared memory action. And using that, we have various options to define and set a new shared memory key or save a new value. We also have the ability to recall the memory key if needed to get the value back out. And we can also increment the shared memory key by a specific number. Let's do that to add some value to our metric. I need to pick what shared memory key is storing our value that we want to increment. And then I can set the number by which I want to increment the shared memory key. I'll add 10 to it, click apply. And if I then run this action, we can go back to EasyMorph Server, to our board, and we can see that our metric is now 10. Now, there are other benefits, as I mentioned, to having metrics based in the catalog. One of them is it gives me another command available for manipulating metrics. The catalog command allows me to do lots of things with lots of types of catalog assets. In this instance, we're looking at metrics. And so the bottom of our list, we have set metric value, get metric value, and also increment metric. So let's increment our metric again. We need to select which metric we want to increment. So we're not selecting the shared memory key this time, but the metric in the catalog and how much we want to increment it by. And one thing to note is that as well as incrementing up, we can also decrement values by using negative numbers here. So if I enter -5, click apply, we run our action again. And if we go back to our board in EasyMorph Server, we can see that the value has gone down from 10 to 5. So these metrics are really useful for giving real-time information back to users on boards. And because they're updating on the fly, any workflows running in the background, as they're processing data, can be adding or subtracting values to those metrics, keeping my KPIs always up to date. Now, a metrics section alone isn't going to be enough functionality, so let's add another section to our board, and I'm going to add an issues section. I give it a title, I'll just call it issues, and the issues section looks pretty blank to start with. The issues section is very much like a simple ticketing or issue management system. I can manually create issues. I'll give it a title. This is manufacturing, so maybe we found a problem with machine 1. And I'll click on create. It allows me to add some additional information. I can firstly give the issue a type. Types available in this list can be customized. We'll look at that in a second. I can add any description, additional information to that issue. I'll let the maintenance team know what the specific problem is. I can also add a due date. This is pretty important, so I'm going to add today's date. And I can then assign it to any EasyMorph Server user. I'll assign this to myself. And lastly, if I want to, I can add attachments of various types. Now I can add attachments from the catalog. So if the metric was showing a big problem, I could attach that and make it obvious, or a file on a server, or I can also add a web link. Let's go back to our board and we can see that our new issue is there, highlighted, assigned to the user. And I can also go and then change the status. So as the issue is being actioned, I can set that it's in progress, keeping everyone up to date with the latest status of the issue. Now, as well as creating and managing issues directly in the board, I can also do it from my EasyMorph workflows. Let's head back over to EasyMorph Desktop. And let's take a look at the board/issue command first. This command lets me do a number of things with issues. The first is I can look at a total of the number of issues on each board. I can see here that they've got my manufacturing board with one issue. I can also list all of the individual issues on a specific board. So if I apply that, I can see that one issue and the details about that, the status, who it's assigned to, etc. And lastly, I can also choose to archive that issue. So if it's complete, it's no longer needed, I can archive the issue. I need to pick which board my issue is on. Then I need to give the issue ID. As I can see in the table, it's man-1, man being the code we gave the board in the first place. Now, if I apply that and I run my action, I can go back to my EasyMorph Server board and we can see that the issue has disappeared. It's no longer showing on my board directly. If I need to, though, I can go to the archived list and I can find that issue in my board. Here I can see it listed. If I want to, I can also add that back onto my board, unarchive it. If I go back to my board, it's back. Now, as well as managing issues from workflows, I can also create issues from workflows. I'll add another action. This time I'll use the raise issue. And I can create the issue with all the same information as I can do manually from within the board. So I can give it a subject or a title for the issue. I can define the type, and again, it's a drop-down list, so those types that are already configured and available to me, I can pick any of them from the list. The same with the state or status of the issue. That list is auto-populated, and I can pick any one in that list. I could assign the user to it if I want to. I won't this time. I'll give it a description so everybody knows what my issue is. And if I need to, I can also give a due date or an attachment to that issue. I won't bother. Indicates I forgot to add my board that I want to create this issue on. Click apply. I'll run this action. And if I go back to my EasyMorph Server board, I can see that my new issue has been created and is waiting for somebody to take a look at that. This ability to automatically raise or manage issues on the fly can be really useful when building data quality pipelines or checks within your existing EasyMorph workflows. These checks can find a problem and immediately raise an issue onto the relevant board that a data quality problem exists and somebody needs to go and take a look at it. Now, as well as issue sections being used as traditional issue tracking, I can also use them for other purposes. I've got another board created in a different space, which is my emergency room management board. And as you can see here, I've got a list of issues, but instead of specific problems, I've created an issue for each room in my ER. And as I mentioned, I can configure the different statuses for the issues in my board and also define the different types of issues as well, as indicated here by the different icons. We'll look in a second how we can customize these, but as you can see, I've also added the individual EasyMorph users as which doctor or nurse is assigned to the patient in that room. This ability to use issues in lots of different ways makes them really flexible and powerful and makes my board not just about KPIs and displaying data, but also means users can interact with the board, making it a true homepage for a team or a process. So how do I configure the different statuses available and the types of issues for my board? Well, to do this, I have to go over to my space settings. I'll pick my hospital space, and on the Explorer feature, if I click Configure, I can see here that I can customize, add individual statuses, set the order of the status by using the arrows to move them up or down, as well as the issue types. The next thing I want to add to my board is some tasks so that my users can find and run the things they need. To do this, they can of course go to the tasks section in EasyMorph Server, but this list can be very long and it can be very difficult for them to find the tasks they need within this list. What we can do is define these tasks into groups. So I do have a manufacturing group already created. with one task in it, but not all my tasks are in that group. So let's just make sure they are. Let's add this task as well to my group and save it so that now my tasks that are relevant are in the group. Again, this makes it a bit easier for them to find in this list, but it's much easier if we can add this entire task group to our board. So if we go back to our board, we'll edit the board. We can add a new section and we'll add a tasks section. Here we can give it any title we want. I will just call it tasks. And as you can see, I've got two options. I can either add all the tasks in the task list that don't have a group, or I can add a specific group. I'll add a specific group and I'll pick that manufacturing group that has our relevant tasks in it. Save that. And now the tasks appear directly in my board for my users to both see, monitor, and run when they need to. I can see this one has already been running and that it's scheduled to run every 15 minutes. I can also see that this one isn't scheduled. I could add a schedule if I wanted, or any other trigger available in EasyMorph Server, and I can just manually run that task when I need to. So the next section I want to add to my board is the Asset Shortcuts section. I'll just name it Shortcuts. And if we scroll down, we can see our Asset Shortcuts section. Now to this section, I can add shortcuts to the resources and information that a user might need to do their job. Firstly, let's add a simple web link. Now this could be a link to any web page of information, any web-enabled system that I can view. Maybe my users need a link to my HR system so they can book their holiday or see who else is on holiday so they can manage the resources in the manufacturing room. I'll just add a simple link to Google so we can see how they work. And I have a simple link that when clicked opens a web page for my users to be able to access their information. If I go back, as well as simple web links, you'll notice that I can also add assets from my catalog. This ability to add assets from the catalog is really powerful and is where the real power of asset shortcuts comes from. Now, not all types of assets in the catalog are possible to add, but many of them are. I can just add a simple hyperlink again that is actually stored in the catalog instead. And because hyperlinks or web links in the catalog can be both static but also calculated, that link may be calculated based upon certain criteria, making sure the user always gets the latest information. I have that web link now available as well. As well as web links, I can also add either links to workflows in EasyMorph so that the user can have a workflow, checks for new orders, select, and when they click, it actually executes that workflow to run. So a bit like from the task section and running a workflow manually, but again, I can add a nice simple link to the exact workflow that they need to run. Let's make ourselves a bit of room. Let's add a data set to my shortcuts. It's in my catalog. I want to add my view orders data set, and this is actually a dynamic data set. So when the user executes it, it prompts them for some input. Do they want all orders or orders currently being manufactured? I'm going to pick orders currently being manufactured. And EasyMorph will run the underlying workflow to calculate that data set, to extract it from the underlying system and present that information back to the user. The user can then view that information, but because it's an asset in EasyMorph, they can also filter that information if they needed to. Let's find, helping them to find a specific order. Let's say they want to look at 2 orders that Penrose have. And they can also download that data as well. So they can output that as a data set file, but also as an Excel or a CSV file, etc., if they want to be able to go and use that information. And again, they can also refresh and retrieve the latest information at any point in time. We can also add shortcuts to a folder of information and files So in this instance, for example, let's give a folder link for our manufacturing team to access the product drawings and design documents so they can easily find them if they need to check them during manufacturing. I'll make some more room to do that this time. Instead of deleting an existing one, I'll actually edit my section and I'll make it a 2-row shortcut section instead. Let's add a shortcut. Again, in my catalog, I have a folder asset. These again can be calculated or fixed static links. Now, when the manufacturing team click on the link, they're taken to the folder of information. And this can be both a folder on the EasyMorph server or on a network drive, but it can also be folders on cloud systems as well. So that could be in Dropbox or Google Drive, or even in Amazon Clouds or Microsoft Azure cloud services as well. And as well as viewing the files, they can even upload new files to those folders if you want them to be able to. Again, a really easy way for people to be able to find bulk information that's relevant to them to be able to do their job. So as well as the metrics section we added at the start when we first created our board, we might want to add other tables of data or data visualizations to provide more information and detail to the users. I'll start by adding a table section to our board. Let's find, first of all, let's go with all of our customers. I have two options. I can use the catalog, and I can also add a dataset file, an EasyMorph dset file directly. Let's do that first of all. Let's find our company's dataset file, and let's add that to our board. Now, as well as viewing that table of data directly in the board, it can be quite long. We can also expand that table and view the full table of data full screen, as well as some additional information it's shown as well. Because dataset files contain data in a tabular form and also the analysis view, we also have the filters and charts defined in our analysis view for that dataset file available to the users to see and use as well. They can pick values, apply filters, and analyze the data however they need. Instead, let's switch our table of data from using a static dataset file to using a catalog asset instead. Now, there are two big reasons you would want to do this.
Just like with metrics, datasets stored in the catalog are easy to reuse across boards and also allow the users to access the same information directly in the catalog, meaning all users are always seeing the exact same set of data.
So let's switch it to a catalog asset. Let's browse, and we'll add this time maybe our failed orders to the board. Save that. We can also add commands to catalog data assets in order to link them together to allow users to delve into that data and explore it in more detail. This dataset, therefore, appears to have blue hyperlinks or web links that allow me to click them and give me options or commands that I can run on that piece of information. So, for example, these are failed orders that for some reason are stuck and therefore can't go into manufacturing. And maybe I want to give the user the ability to approve this order, allowing it to pass into manufacturing and no longer be stuck. Alternatively, I can delve and link this set of data to another set of data. So if I want to return all of the orders for this customer that are stuck, EasyMorph will execute the relevant workflow underneath and provide me back the orders specifically for that user or customer. So let's take a look at how we do that. This has to be set up within EasyMorph Desktop. And in EasyMorph Desktop, if I find the same data asset and edit it, I can see that commands have been defined in order to provide that extra functionality within that table. Commands, for example, the view all customer orders command, execute a specific catalog asset. In this instance, it's a workflow asset that generates a table of data by extracting it from the underlying system. And then I link the parameter in that workflow, which requests which set of data to get, which customer's information. And I add the company ID or the name from the company column in this data set that we're looking to link from. That provides the functionality so that when users click those links, they can explore data, and we can link from one catalog asset of data to another catalog asset to another catalog asset and delve and explore that data in great detail. So a single table within the catalog can not just give users access to one table of data, but allow them to explore from that table other tables of information and data that they might need. Back in our board, we can also add charts or simple visualizations to our board. And these also work using EasyMorph dataset files. So if I add charts section, I'll just call it charts. Again, I can use a static dataset file from the catalog, or I can use a static dset file. Let's go with the dset file this time. And again, I'll pick that company's dataset that we saw before had the analysis view within it, and that had charts defined in that analysis view. It has two charts. I'll pick both of them. Click Save My Changes, and if I look at the bottom of my screen, I now have simple charts available. I can hover the charts and see the individual details, and I can also switch between two or more charts if I selected more from my dataset analysis view. As well as being able to add charts from dataset files, I also have the ability to add entire dashboards or workbooks from Tableau. If I'll add a Tableau section, let's say BI dashboard, I have a catalog asset configured linking to a Tableau workbook. I save the changes. And again, if I scroll down now, I have an entire section that is embedding that catalog asset, which is a Tableau dashboard or workbook, directly into my EasyMorph Server board. And finally, there are just a few features to point out to enable us to tidy up our board and make it ready for our users. The first is that we can add a text section to our board. This can be for any purpose you need. I'll just add a very simple welcome message to let our users know they've reached the right board. Now, because we've only just added this section, it will be at the bottom of our board. That doesn't really make sense. We want it at the top. So every section will have arrows allowing you to move that section up or down the board as needed to get the right order so that the sections make sense and put the priority information at the top of the board, easiest to find for the user. Note that it's possible to add multiple of each section type to a board. The exception is the issues section, which can only have one on each board. This means if I need more metrics than is possible to add within a single metrics section, I can add an additional metrics section and configure more metrics, providing all the information to the users that they need. Hopefully that's given you some insight into building boards and the things you can add to them to make them useful home pages for any technical or business process, team or function. There are many more options for some of the features we've looked at, especially those where you're adding something from the EasyMorph catalog, and we have more section types planned for the future to make boards even more useful. If you have any questions about creating boards, hop on over to the EasyMorph community at easymorph.com and ask them there, where another user or member of the EasyMorph team will be more than happy to help.